Very nice to be here. Thank you so much for having me here in Ottawa. So the new book is called Walking to Mohakar. There are more than one Mohakar in the world. The Mohakar I'm thinking of in this book is it's a small, very small town in southern Spain, perched on a steep rock overlooking the Mediterranean Sea. And I only found out after this book was published what the word Mohakar means, but it was pleasing to me. It sort of adds yet another interesting and appropriate layer to this book, which is very layered already with intercultural dialogues and encounters, engagements. So somebody told me in Winnipeg that the word Mohakar, which maybe some of you already know this, but I didn't know this. The word Mohakar is a Swahili word, and it means, it has two meanings. One meaning is boundary, and like border, and one meaning is, it sounds like the opposite, but you can see how it's related. It's like nurturing, as in holding, as in swaddling. Isn't it interesting, eh? And Swahili, as you know, it's a trade language. It's a mongrel language, a lot of African words from various different African dialects mixed together with Latin. It's just a strange thing. And it's very appropriate because Mohakar, being on the southern end of Spain, is a city of many international engagements. But this book it's actually got 3 sections, and I moved around a lot. I traveled a lot in the last decade. So each section is sort of set in a different landscape, and has a different kind of intercultural engagement going on. And at the last minute, I had this idea of having each section translated into another language. It was such an interesting experience, and. The publisher, Turnstone Press, they were like, they were ready to go to press. And I said, hold everything, I have this idea. And they said, it's too late. And I said, no, but you will like this idea. So I told them about it, and they thought it was a really good idea, but they said, but that's so complicated, all these languages, and we're going to have to get all these translators and all these copy editors and stuff. And I already had this all set up, you see, by then. So I said, I will just hand it all to you, this package. And one of my translators was Ari Velatar. She's a Mexican writer in exile here in Canada. And she made this interesting comment, which was, only in North America do we think that publishing multi-language books is unaffordable luxury. Everywhere else in the world is considered an unavoidable necessity, which I thought was very interesting. So, but the function of the translations is slightly different. It has a slightly different meaning than is usually the case, because usually when you're translating books, you're taking something from like a foreign language and you're trying to put it into this other language, which is the language of reception. But we sort of think we invented a new genre here because the whole book is in the base language is English, and then we've translated each section into another language, or in some cases it was already in another language. So it's sort of really trying to. I grew up in a German-speaking community, and. I spent much of my life being ashamed of having a German accent, and after I left that community, and trying to become monolingual, and it's really in the last few decades when I had this privilege of traveling around the world and finding out that actually around the world, except in North America, it's not only you're allowed to speak many languages, you're like encouraged to. So I guess I'm trying to do penance for giving up my mother tongue, and try to get back some of that multi-language experience that was actually a painful thing for me to give up. So I'm going to read you something from the first section, which is called Welding and Other Joining Procedures. Does this sound okay? You can hear me in the back? Okay. And it was translated into French by Charles Leblanc of St. Boniface, Manitoba. And this is called 9 River Ghazals, and it's set at the Forks, which is meeting place of the Red and Assiniboine rivers, which is Winnipeg is built around this meeting place, but it's also actually a very ancient meeting place of First Nations people. They say they've been meeting there for, tens of thousands of years. So 9 River Ghazals. 1. October. The poet is dead. The leaves of Manitoba, you got to admire them, turn yellow, sigh once, and drop. On the banks of the Assiniboine, we sat down and wept. Maddie, Maddie, muddy river dog, shh, don't talk. Tenacious little ash tree hugging the bank. Archaeology of cars, biology of art, theology of scars. My hands that used to be heart-shaped fluttering leaves have become thick roots, gnarled in soil. Orange-streaked sunset, calcified bones, the flood marks of 509705 C, wild geese. 2. After the Pope's visit, the river keepers went on strike and the ferrymen got drunk. No more funerals. So did I. The mice in the park huddled under hay. That was the summer of the return of the dinosaurs, roaring along the highway at full throttle, scattering the wheat. Flap of thunderbirds in the air. That's the thing of it. The fertilizer ends up in the river, choking the fish. What will the lake say? The raft trip of a lifetime, Devil's Lake to the locks, sweet baptism in the holy red river. 3. We shot the shaggy buffalo through the heart, the bullet entering at an angle just behind the shoulder. Ask me the question. 10 cents per gopher tail, $2 a mink. Every farmer's wife's 10 children. Beer bottles, chipped cups, rotting mattresses, wild spirit sky dance, 3 a.m. multicolored. Our horses were just as wild and excited as we were, chasing the buffalo. Those were cows that now are sludge, bloated hides bumping against the bridge. 4. The houses of our mothers grow smaller and smaller, diamond rings lost in the drain. Dragon boats flaming, tossed by wind. The moon laughs behind the curtain. Should we declare capitalism a crime against the cosmos? The stars hold court. This place where two rivers meet, smoke signals, birch bark, carnival, touch of skin, danger. You don't know who Gabriel Dumont was? Slender hands flashing. Well. 5. Oh, thou sweet sugar beet, diabetic kids, worm-eaten bunkers at the end of the field. You want to talk about human rights? Don't put your junk in my backyard, my backyard, my backyard. Bags of hide in our Dachau farmyards, brainless chickie knobs, crafty pagoons. Sure, it's hell to work in the abattoir, poor things, let them drink cheap rum on weekends. See now the scorned furies rise out of the deep. 6. Red and yellow, black and white. Our mouths are full of blood. Is it the blood we'll live by? Nausea, the dance of your lost singing soul. It's no longer a question of avoiding disaster, is it? On Saturdays, she teaches salsa, rumba, bolero. On Sundays, she rehearses despair. When I think of Kali, I think of you, Esteban, your face lit up, head over heels in love with your grandchild. Which would you rather have, salsa or cars? The veins of the earth, granite, flesh, breathing. 7. If a white horse rides into your dreams, you will be blessed with a heroic life. Child with no name, your shrill voice pierced me to the quick, your 80-year-old face, raptor eyes. Same for the elephant, the wolf, and the eagle. Squeaky wooden wheels trampling the sweet grass. The wonder of sea legs in the middle of prairie. At night, we worship the stars, gorgeous, dark, echoing in our minds, gasp of infinity. Invasion of loose strife, toxic algae, free trade. 8. The museum as mausoleum, Hallmark greeting card. Dear Mom, we would have been here. Pity citizens with oil under their houses as the petroleum economy comes crashing down. Could there have been another way? Genghis Khan gallops away across Mongolia. The music of the spheres is out of whack, vibrating to engine motors instead of hymns. Sing it, little sparrow, Leonard Cohen. From bitter searching of the heart, we rise to play a greater part. 9. Kissing X was like kissing rubber. I miss your kiss, angels ascending and descending the staircase of heaven. There are hard times a-coming, Jesus. What are we observing if not the daily kitchen? Now let us practice both jubilation and restraint. I river, I river, I river. The mice were right. Hay makes the best insulation against winter. Smells nice, too. Poor Tom's a cold. Winnipeg is furious. We should have taken better care of this. I've just remembered, I think that these ghazals were published in Arc magazine, weren't they? I think so. In fact, they were nominated for a, I don't know, National Magazine Award or something from Arc magazine. Okay, this poem is called The Late Evening News. I wrote it for Henry Champ, the NBC News reporter, who is now the chancellor of Brandt University, where I teach in Manitoba. And he went to school there, so I wrote this for his installation as the chancellor. So this is The Late Evening News, November 4th, 2008. You are standing outside the gate of the big lit-up White House with its purring, shiny black cars and men in black suits glued to walkie-talkies. Your face is shadow-dappled under red maple leaves. You look into the camera that looks into our eyes. Our animated dinner conversations are souls, and tell your last big story. It is so much bigger than can be told all at once. Its origins go back to sun-blasted Africa, sea-swept islands, Chicago slums. Its reach encompasses queens and kings, poor and rich, all the far nations of the earth. You look over your shoulder at the crowds gathering on Pennsylvania Avenue. This wasn't part of the script. There are cheers erupting and guards gathering. Will there be a riot? The news media are trained to stoicism, straight face and even voice, conveying the worst news to our intimate living rooms as if it were fair, as if your neutrality and frequent heroism under fire could cancel out its oversized terrors, or at the very least keep them at a distance. What about joy? What about dancing in the streets at midnight? What about a whole population cheering the return of Quetzalcoatl, bright-plumed, palm-graced, amidst the tilting empire, weaving gracefully between the riot police, happiness flowing across our cheeks like fine wine? The script jiggles, wavers, quivers its nostrils to this new wind, wafting in from the far horizon, lifts its heels, flicks its mane, kicks a little. Why not? Why not a little two-step right there on Pennsylvania Avenue in this bright moment of hope, of large historical inequities righting themselves, this moment when old and new, black and white, water and fire, mercy and remorse, salamanders and eagles stretch across the grand canyons of old wounds to touch wingtips, fingertips. The story cannot be told all at once. There are many new dance steps to be learned. You told your wife this is the last story, but the story doesn't end. The Ethiopian proprietor of the local 7-Eleven and his brothers enfold you in long bear hugs when you stop by for milk. The gods visit us not because we have cried, but because we have resolved humbly in the midst of fears, tears, to begin again, to be always again beginners. And the second section of this book is called Hymns for Detroit, and it is translations of traditional German Mennonite hymns that I grew up with. They're mostly 17th century hymns that are, sort of like German, German romantic hymns. And I lived for almost a decade in Windsor, across the river from Detroit. And I grew up in Manitoba, so I'm actually a prairie girl. And I'm living there again now. But anyway, it was a very big shock for me to be living in Windsor, because it was a culture shock for me to be in such a hyper-industrialized place. And while I was there, it was very good for me to be there, because while I was there, I started understanding the traditionalist heritage of my of my people, and because for a long time I was like, oh yeah, you know, why were they so backwards? But and I understood that they had. I suddenly got what the vision of the Mennonites was, which was that they were this peasant land rights movement in the 16th century, at the beginning of the rise of modernity, and they had this presumptuous idea that they could stay out of modernity, that they could try to stay out of modernity, and they actually did to a large extent until recently. So I thought it would be an interesting exercise for me, and I was homesick for these hymns that we used to sing all day, every day. When the women in the villages sing these hymns all day, every day, when they're milking the cows, when they're shelling the peas, when they're cooking the breakfast. And I thought it would be an interesting exercise to translate them in the way that Aaron Moray taught us to do, you know, into contemporary, you know, Canadian terms. And but while I was doing it, I was actually sitting there and crying over my computer, because a lot of the grand consolation in those hymns is the green world, and that's what's in so much trouble in Windsor, Detroit, and everywhere. So I took, you know, rather large liberties in translating them. So, and the sort of the idea was, you know, like if it said sheep on hillsides, and I was in Windsor, I looked out the window and I said, what is on the hillside, or on the not hillside? And I put cars on the 401, that sort of thing. So this first hymn, I'll just read the first two lines of the German. So we have the German text in here in the book. Nun ruhen alle Wälder, Vieh, Menschen, Städte und Felder, es schläft die ganze Welt. So it's like now, I would sing it for you if I was a better singer, but I'm kind of shy on singing. It's like now the forest is sleeping, and the people are sleeping, and the cities are sleeping, and the fields are sleeping, and the whole world is sleeping, and God is watching over everything in this very peaceful way. So this is Hymns for Detroit 1. Now the forest sleeps behind barbed wire gates. Dogs on sofas, crows in the fields. Michigan boys puke in the parking lots. Professors count grades. The border is on orange alert. Somewhere above the green fluorescent smog, chromed stars shimmer. See, all around us flash invisible silver shields. Another day is gone. Night rushes in for her shift. Nurse, give me the blue, the purple pill to take me far away so I can come apart and back together with no one watching. The moon, the moon, the moon shines on us, our closed eyes, wet faces, clenched heart muscles, the I-75, our lost nieces, the Afghanis and their stones. 2. Dawn is a frizzy fiction, pale orange, waking to broad noon after the too short, noisy night. The alarm clock invented the day. A single star watched over us. Sparrows jabber behind glass, turn down the radio, praise the street. 3. Weeds and grasses along the tracks whisper in the hot wind. The children please her, tell them their socks and shoes crumpled under the monkey bars. Those were lucky lambs gamboling in wild meadows beside clear river water. The air is too thick here for our little lungs. Each morning we wake coughing and reach for our puffers. Big trucks drive by on big noisy wheels. Jesus saves. Mommy said, don't eat the fish. Watch them on TV. And this hymn book that I was using is a hymn book I got from my mother, and it has hymns for all occasions. I was very impressed by the, you know, looking back on it, it's like the grandeur of the vision of these hymns, which was a much grander sort of stance, more heroic stance to the world, and what allow ourselves in the modern world. So this is from a different part of the book. 6. Closer, closer, closer I want to be to you. Such deliciousness in this purgatory of mostly in the telephone wires, like God in whose absence we practice eternity. One long ring too short. Operator, the WestJet seat sale, gasoline, faint memory of flesh, this flickering screen. Skin against skin, dark red all night long behind the woodshed. Hotter than brimstone, blaze you, blaze, light by which we shine, sumac, chokecherry, ash. If I were a magpie with blue, black, white, dazzling wings, I'd cry my raucous cry and fly to you. Ah, but I am not, have not, ah, but I am not, have not, enough feathers for even WestJet, not today. So I stay all the way down here, remembering your sweet arms. Oh. Snuck in a couple of folk songs and things. That's from a German folk song that some of you may know, if you know German folk songs. And there was a hymn in that book that was called, well, the first line is, Geht nun hin und grabt mein Grab, which is, go and dig my grave. And it's a funeral song, but it's written from the point of view of the dead person. So I thought that was interesting. So I set myself this exercise of writing a funeral poem for myself, and I thought it was a very interesting exercise. I recommend it to you all. 8. Go now, friends, and scatter my shattered flesh over the blue-gray water. Cry your raven cries into the deep. Sell my charred bones to the sand people. Ask a high price. Weep, weep for my long, short life so bitter and tender. Eat, drink this fruit, this red wine, the sweet hurt of sweet earth, the wind's cry, bright-colored spirit fish down under. And this last one is a retelling of a folk tale that we used to tell in, well, actually my mother tongue is Plautdeutsch, it's an oral dialect. It's much older than German, than High German. And we used to tell each other this, but I've sort of lost my Plautdeutsch so much that I wrote this in English, and then I got my cousin Erica to translate it back into Plautdeutsch. There's a little translation loop going on in this book. 9. Someday when I am big and you are little, you will sit on my lap and tell me this same story of how the bear lost his tail waiting and waiting for fish to bite under the ice. Ouch! Tugging and tugging, and that tricky fox laughed and laughed all the way home, and then I will hug you and hug you just the way you are hugging me, the way you are hugging me now. And part of the, I discovered so many things with this sort of translation exercise, well, with everything about this book. So, after we did the translations, they're like, okay, yeah, but there's some Plautdeutsch. And then, I was talking to my Cree friends, and they said, well, where's the Cree? And then I said, oh my God, and where's the Ojibwe? Where's the Dakota? And then I was like, oh, there's all these other languages behind these languages, or that are even, it should be translated in a way, once you get started, so that you can't stop. So it should have like at least, 100 languages. So the third section is called Walking to Mojácar. And I will read, and Mojácar is in southern Spain. It was like it's Lorca country. So I found it very easy to write poems there. There's, it's still very medieval, and Lorca is just lying everywhere in the fields. You just slurp it up and write it down. You don't have to go through that whole zone, that we go through in Canada, where you say, what is poetry? Who's going to read this anyway? Are they going to understand it? Why am I not a screenwriter instead, and all this sort of thing. And I kind of wrote them. Just somebody asked me about this the other day, and yes, I just kind of wrote them just the way they are. I didn't revise them or anything. They just kind of wrote one a day or something. The Lottery of History. I have come back to Barcelona, Ferran, looking for you among the rough-cut stones of the Barri Gothique, the shining cafes of Gracia. The Rambla sings its many languages. Pickpockets dart from stall to stall between fire-eaters and green-fingered tree spirits, promoting eternal, unregulated international free trade. The coal-eyed, platform-heeled Catalonian rulers of the night mingle with the pale children of the Nuevo Rico. The stone steps of the Salo del Tinel remember, as I do, the velvet swish of inquisitors' robes, barefoot supplication of the accused. Slaughtered pork gleams in Turkish kiosks, pressed grapes sparkle in fluted glasses. Your uncle's fallen soldier's blood shimmers with junkies under Gaudi's lamps in the palm-graced Plaza Real. Cristobal Colon points across the sea to where my Flemish peasant ancestors fleeing Russian Tsars found refuge in land newly stolen from Buffalo and Métis. It's a beautiful Ferrand Sea, the lottery of history, its precious teeter-totter, the seas roll in and out, the dark, sexy call of the deep, slight Mediterranean breeze. Earth's creatures rubbing shoulders laced and feathered, parading hopefully, flamenco-rhythmed, colorfully, up and down. It says, walking to Mojácar. Along the winding, car-studded new highways of the still rosemary-scented Andalusian hills, the poets wander, bewildered, out of time, flayed by the centuries' losses weighing heavy on them. Herds of invisible sky sheep driven by wind. On the lip of a ragged colina overlooking the sea, bright red canciones spring from jutted rock. Not for a moment, Federico Garcia Lorca, not for a moment. Dark-eyed leopard, lovely lover, are you alone, who charmed the serpents of the Hudson River into camellia-starred weaving, who wept loud and long over the crucified bones of the world's tortured boy-men, racked on gray steel-girded street corners, scattered shivering on brown bomb-shelled beaches. You gave us blue fireflies over New York. You saw the sky flee before the black plumes of smoke and tumult of windows. You insisted on dancing among columns of blood. Half the world is sand, you said, the other half mercury. You were lightning flashing in between. We taste ashes in our mouths, Federico. The tourists have pissed in the wells, the olive trees are drying up. Fly back to us across the implacable Atlantic. Bring along your dark doves, masks, roses, little eagles. So when I was there, I was imagining him in New York, and so he's flying back. I wanted him to fly back from New York to Spain, but now that I'm back in North America, I sort of want him to fly back. It sort of works either way, I guess. This is called Guira y Paz. It's a poem for Israel Garcia Montero, a very talented young painter from Madrid I met in Spain. And the cover of this book is one of his images, so you can see how talented he is. Guira y Paz for Israel Garcia Montero. And you, El Niño, whose Castilian parents, in a moment of historical idealism not unrelated to the recent Spanish past, named you Israel, and cheered when their chosen son entered the stock market and booed when he left it. You move elegantly, jaguar-like, whirling between their colliding wheels, refusing to get caught. In your green and blue canvases, the world is desire, is revolution, is apocalypse. Vicente Amigo crooning mensajes in the background. You are a star. You shine between sun and night on the hilly horizon of La Sierra de Gredos, the silver-fluted sorrow of your mother, mingling in your singing hands across the mist-shrouded Vegas with your father's stern regret. You embrace shadow and light. You prefer the dark, contoured colors of grief and crimson, hibiscus and pomegranate to sharp lines of black and white. In your long, slender brown arms, Morocco meets Paris and Brussels and New York. Bombs are falling on Syria and Lebanon. The stock market is holding its breath. The paintings in your studio protest full-blooded con cariño. Your uncle stares out of the high window of his office tower in Madrid in his beautiful shoes. And this is called Gracias. And it's sort of about the pleasure of getting to hang out with, I was staying at an international artist retreat, and about the great pleasure and privilege of getting to hang out with artists. And so you are all included in this poem because it's such a wonderful perk of being of the hard work of being trying to be a poet to get to hang out with the most interesting people wherever you go. So you are all in this poem too. Gracias. As for me, amigos, I have been supremely happy here with you, walking through the green misted Vegas of Mojácar in these magical days, lifted out of time on the edge of our lives and the deep singing sea, threading our way between steep rock and fragrant herb and stately eucalyptus, stirred today by exhilarating high wind. Here endeth a 7,000-year-old Ugaritic enchantment. Here riseth a golden tree. Last night the lights went out in the city on the hill. Everything became still. In the distance we heard gypsy guitars quivering, Federico Garcia Lorca inconsolable weeping in the dark. Oil lamps flickered from caves. Sí, poetas, amigos, pintores. I found joy here, blooming, jasmine-scented in the desert, in these fields of sorrow, this land of death without eyes and of arrows, this valley of the shadow of the heart, where the world begins and ends, and begins again among bulrushes rustling under the watchful, dark, staring red gaze of the old bruja in the ravine, sung to by cicadas, who are happy, amigos, as we are, as we have been, who are drunk with light and know the secret of the birth of grass and blue sky and blood and the night. Thank you.